Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for the Customer Marketing Summit. As we prepare to unleash another exciting session, we just want to say a massive thank you to all our partners, sponsors, you, and our ensemble of speakers and participants for helping us bring this pioneering event to life. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can upgrade your pass to include access to all today's sessions on demand. Or you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire back catalogue of event content. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Now, back to the sessions.
Thanks for joining this session of the Customer Marketing Summit. I'm delighted to be here with a great panel today where we're going to be talking about pivoting in a pandemic. My name is Rebecca Nerad. I'm Vice President of Customer Success at E2Open. We are a leading provider of supply chain and channel shaping solutions. I've spent most of my career in customer success, although I did have the opportunity to lead a marketing team a few years ago. And I'm really glad to be here today with Denny, Larissa, Lisa, and Alex. Why don't you take a moment and share who you are and why you're interested in this topic of pivoting in a pandemic? Denny, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Rebecca. So my name is Danny Hollick. I am currently the Senior Manager of Customer Marketing at Unbounce. So Unbounce is a company that essentially helps all kinds of businesses build landing pages quickly and easily so that we can get better conversion rates on your marketing campaigns. Prior to that, I led product marketing and a lot of our growth marketing for fintech Innovation Lab, and was the marketing director for one of Canada's first robo-advisors up here called WealthBar. And so currently today, just leading the Unbounce customer marketing team. We're responsible for essentially driving the user behaviors that make customers most successful within Unbounce. So a lot of that is activating them, keeping them engaged, and making sure that we keep them around for a while. I'm definitely personally interested in this topic, mostly because I thrive in chaos a little bit, to be honest. Prior to working in marketing, I was actually a law enforcement officer. And so I was always able to kind of keep my head level when I was under a lot of pressure. And I think for the most part, I've kind of transferred that over to my office career as well too. So definitely really interested in just kind of pivoting under pressure and how to make that work.
I have a colleague who says she likes to open Pandora's box and then see what she can do with it. Made me think of that. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Really excited to be here today. My name is Alex Verdon. I'm a senior manager of product marketing at a company called Everfi, and we address key social issues through education across the United States and the globe. And why I'm so interested in this topic is at the heart of product marketing is really keeping the customer focused and at the center of all we do, from positioning to rolling out new products into the market. So this past year has seen us have to pivot quickly and address customer needs in rapid time, and always make sure that we are keeping the customer in mind and not all of the chaos around the situation of the last year. So great to be here.
Thanks, Alex. Larissa, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Larissa Sandhu. As Rebecca mentioned, I am the head of customer marketing and advocacy at Peakon, which is a Workday company. I've been in the customer marketing and advocacy space for over 6 years now at various different B2B SaaS companies. So I'm very interested in the topic of customer marketing, and especially in times, as kind of Denny mentioned, times of chaos and during a pandemic. So a little bit about Peakon. It's the largest standardized database of employee feedback worldwide. We focus specifically on voice of employee. And as of recently, we do focus very much on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been a really hot topic during the pandemic. Specific to the topic, I'm very interested just because 2020 was an immensely difficult and, of course, unpredictable year for everybody. And I think it's been able to challenge me personally, and I think customer marketers in general, and kind of shock us in a way that we've been able to have lasting effects, on our personal and professional lives. And we've kind of had to put aside our marketing hats to a certain extent and really expose our humanity to our customers. So, and to the peers, to the world. And we had to really show our vulnerabilities. And I think that's actually what has helped us stay together, as marketers, as people. So I think, yeah, this year is going to change everything for customer marketing and everyone else.
Awesome. Thanks, Larissa. Lisa.
Thank you, Rebecca, for having me on the panel. Really appreciate it. I am the head of marketing at Digital Root for the Americas. I also lead up their Salesforce practice marketing. Digital Root has a usage data platform that converts raw usage data into billable items. So we help companies across their monetization for quote to cash, finance system consolidation. We were really well known in the telecom mediation area. Now we've branched out into other areas and for enterprise businesses. So with the pandemic and being in marketing, consumption's been a really huge thing, right? And a lot of these business models where it's been very flat fee or even older business models where consumers have traditionally been billed by the month or by the year, they've now found in the pandemic, hey, if I don't drive my car every day, why am I being billed every day for it? So this is where our platform has really come into play and helped companies be able to kind of pivot quickly as consumers are driving those business models forward to, I'm not going to pay for the things I'm not using anymore. But as a marketer, I can't think of a single company in the pandemic that hasn't been affected one way or another. And in both my professional and in my volunteer role, I've seen businesses that are either at risk or have been able to move beyond all the effects of the pandemic and all the ones in between. In my current role, part of what we're doing and moving from 2020 into 2021 is just pivoting and setting up to be more of a hybrid approach around, what customers need, more, kind of what Larissa had mentioned, being more empathetic, continuing to humanize the brand. How do we relate? We're a small business too, but it doesn't mean we don't relate to what the larger businesses and in those smaller divisions are going through. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned is just to, again, ensure that we're hyper-focused on personalization and interactivity as people start to get fatigued from virtual things that are happening around us.
Thanks, Lisa. We already hit around some of the major topics I think that we're going to get into today when we're thinking about the major shifts that we've seen over the past year and how we've had to adapt our business model as a result. Let's go back to Lisa. Do you want to share some about what you've done or some examples on how to engage with your customers?
Sure. And I know, like I kind of touched on a little bit in my opening here, the pandemic really has, from a virtual, setting, in-person versus virtual, and what we were able to do is really forced a lot of organizations to rethink how to reach prospects and customers where they provide it, where are they at, where are they heading, the virtual event fatigue, and do we move from virtual events to virtual experiences? And I've seen a lot of organizations do that. I was in two organizations. One, I moved in 2020 to a new organization. So in both of my organizations, I kind of saw how the fatigue was setting in and how do we quickly pivot now to say, let's stop talking at them and let's start talking with them and creating more of those virtual roundtable experiences, more of the smaller one diffuse that we would be doing in person, where we were able to get in front of them and try to make it more engaging, doing more of a 15 to 20 minute talk, and then having, a virtual sommelier experience or something where we maybe offered something around sporting events or something that we could do that would continue to engage and make it interactive so that we could talk to our customers and network with them, but not always just doing that, we're talking at them, but providing still some learning. And prior to 2020, I feel, that sales and marketing both relied heavily on those face-to-face meetings and in-person events, and those were critical stages in our sales cycle and our customer journey. And as marketers, we had to quickly pivot to those virtual events and experiences and transform our approach while being cognizant of that fatigue and overall virtual event exhaustion that we were running into. And it's hard to replace the impact of those face-to-face interactions for both salespeople and customers alike. And they love having those interactions. It wasn't just the salespeople that were missing them. We found our customers wanted to interact with us and learn more from us in those face-to-face environments. And they still have clear benefits. But for many companies, we knew that, my company that I worked with last year, having to cancel a huge customer event meant losing a significant amount of revenue. I mean, in the end of the day, we're in companies just like our customers that we have revenue we're trying to drive. And so what was the learning point? We tried to figure out as we started to pivot from our biggest customer event being physical to moving it virtual. And one of the things we quickly realized was a good learning point was not one size fits all, right? And not everything that works in the virtual world, physical world, doesn't always translate well to the virtual world. And so we had some gotchas and we worked through it. I think also adding that regional component, things that we tried to do an event across multiple regions. And we realized that we actually had to break it up. We had to do one in Europe, much different than the one we did here. And just, learnings and moving forward. When we moved again, like our annual event from physical to virtual, we found that some of those other challenges came into just individual time zones inside of the US and how we were going to try to do a happy hour in the East when people were still working at 2:00 in the afternoon, in the West. So how do we account for that? One thing we did do that worked out really well was we chose a really strong virtual event vendor, and they took a physical type of appearance in their platform and were able to make it very interactive. So we had a lobby, we had lots of networking opportunities that were virtual where it was very face-to-face like this, very Zoom-like. And then they also had the ability to ask speaker questions, even though some of our speaker events were pre-recorded, much like this. And then we would be in the chat and we could talk to them. But I think going into 2021, I still believe marketers are going to have to utilize virtual events. And as we move to a more hybrid approach, once the pandemic begins to lessen, I think the key is to know your target audience well. You got to get really creative and research and find the right tools to provide that engaging content. Virtual experiences are here to stay. I don't think they're going to go away. But we as marketers need to continue to combine physical and virtual strategies to engage with our customers.
Thanks, Lisa. There, again, a lot of topics there. Before we pivot, does anyone want to share more about the event side of things and changes you've needed to make over this past year? Okay, so Larissa, I want to pivot for a moment. I loved how you shared earlier on about the need to be more vulnerable and direct and open with our customers. I think that, to me, that's been an important part of being a leader, right? Is we go from this place of wanting to be kind of strong and proud and our solution is the best and our products are the best, right? We're really pivoting to a place where I think being more direct and more open, both as companies and as individuals, is becoming more important. Do you want to share more on that topic that you introduced earlier?
Yeah, definitely. So I think just kind of piggybacking on the topic that you're talking about, a major shift or pivot for us within the last year has been in regards to content strategy and just corporate narrative. So of course, being in a pandemic, it's going to be a lot different marketing to your customers from a content perspective and really writing with a higher purpose and mission. And it became kind of more clear for us that as the pandemic progressed, our customers had less time for reading our content. So it became a lot more skimmable. And there was definitely a huge shift in what type of content they were more interested in. So we started creating more checklists and guidebooks on, things like that were a little bit more business critical. So how to shift to a remote, workforce, how to how to, I guess, what is the other one? Something like how to have the best outcome for Zoom meetings. Things that, we were in previously, I was in the cybersecurity space. Like we were not ever focusing on things like that in the past. So to see that major content shift was really eye-opening, and just really focusing more on value-based messaging instead of, directing people to like that normal call to action of book a demo with us. It was more, we don't need you to book a demo. We just want you to, feel safe. We want you to feel like you have a strategic partner with us, whether you're, on the smaller end of the customer spectrum or whether you're an enterprise or strategic account. And I think really focusing more on that value and how we would be strategic partners with our customers in the long run, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, and really having different strategies for different types of customers. It might be hard to believe, but we had, a good chunk of customers that actually were doing extremely well in the pandemic. We had healthcare customers, we had virtual event customers, and they needed to scale quicker than ever before. So we had this, kind of juxtaposition of scaling certain customers at a record rate and creating that type of content. And then the opposite customers that were having to have major layoffs, that were needing to scale down their business. So yeah, it was very challenging, but being able to shift, different strategies based on different, customer needs, and really focusing on their pain points, and kind of going from there while kind of maintaining our mission and our purpose as a company, was the only way that we were able to successfully pivot during the pandemic.
Yeah, Larissa, I love all those sentiments. And from the product marketing perspective, the type of positioning documents or the sales collateral or what I had to prepare for our demand gen team, customer marketing team, all kind of had to shift to be more empathetic and more outcomes based. So because we are an education technology company, we have subject matter experts and put out content on mental wellness, financial literacy, prescription drug safety. And so we were seeing, in the news, as everybody else was, all of these issues sort of coming up. And so not only were we positioning the products as a way to help mitigate some of that through education, we were also putting out just general pieces that somebody could come onto the EverFi site, see, and give them some support during the pandemic. And that's a strategy I believe we'll continue to go forward with.
Denny, would you say that your content also changed? You saw a pivot there, or was it more in kind of the data and the support behind what you were doing with your work? Where did you have a bigger pivot?
Yeah, I would definitely, so our content definitely did change for sure. I think knowing how that content needed to change was probably the more difficult thing to figure out though. And that's where kind of the data piece came in a little bit. But yeah, we did end up changing our content quite a bit, because what we noticed early on was our customers were changing. The people that were signing up for Unbounce were changing. Customer behaviors started changing very quickly. And what we didn't want to do was what a lot of customers might have been exhibiting, which was like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to COVID hitting, and then trying to make decisions without necessarily having data behind those decisions. And so in a lot of cases, in many cases, actually, we had a big group of customers that were calling up and saying, hey, we need to cancel, but we don't know why we need to cancel. There's just a big pandemic in front of us right now, right? But they didn't actually know what the facts were ahead of us. And so what we did is, again, going back to like keeping that level head and trying to make decisions without necessarily that knee-jerk reaction, we took a really close look at like how were our customers changing, what were their behaviors, and how was segmentation changing as well too. We learned that we didn't necessarily have all of the data that we needed to, and so we've invested a lot since in making sure that we have better segmentation of data, especially around customer behaviors. But what we noticed was that we saw a lot more smaller businesses signing up for our company, and we service a wide array. We service right from like one person companies all the way up to large enterprises. But we knew that the user problems that we were going to be solving were going to be very different if we saw a shift in that segmentation, as well as like um, going through this change. A lot of those businesses were facing brand new problems. Like Alex mentioned, like we had customers that were closing their doors, and we needed to figure out like, hey, how can we support them and keep them their business afloat? But also we had customers that were having to figure out how to scale significantly faster than they ever did in their whole existence. And so once we realized what those shifts were in terms of the customer segmentation, so certain businesses, say like in healthcare, were thriving. Okay, well, how can we support those kind of businesses and help them scale? Whereas maybe smaller businesses, okay, how can we make sure that they can keep their doors open and they're still going to remain customers, and maybe this is just a little bit of a blip for them. And so just kind of going back to, I guess, the real theme, underlying theme, it all came down to empathy and understanding like true user problems and how you can solve those user problems in a meaningful way. But in order for us to do that, we really needed to have the data in front of us, and we needed to make decisions with data. And I would say that there's both the qualitative and quantitative. We needed to lean on both of those, right? So once we started seeing trends, we needed to actually pick up the phone and call those customers or talk to them and see like, hey, what are you going through right now? And make sure that we were adjusting, our content strategies, our onboarding strategies, based off of what they were saying and the pain points they were experiencing.
Would any of you say that your approach to data, what you understood about your strategies, did that shift? Did it change in a way that you expected or wouldn't have thought of? Or did the pandemic bring kind of a new understanding to any of your companies about your customers and how they're using your solutions?
I think for me, where I sit in the organization, I double down on really getting in front of the customer, whether that be listening to sales calls or reading notes in Salesforce or actually talking to customers directly, kind of turning that up and asking some key questions when it came to planning for future product releases or some positioning when it came to collateral that I was working on across different functions at Everfi. So I think it heightened my awareness of just being present when it came to sourcing that qualitative side from the customer directly, as opposed to, secondhand in a sales meeting or a brainstorm or something like that.
Same with me on our side. I'm very close. I'm more on the demand gen side, and so being very close to sales, it really changed our selling motion in terms of being more strategic. We went back and looked at the buyer personas, and we really dug deep into the demographics, and where before we might be looking at what's their intent to buy, we started to change it up and create demographics around what are they dealing with today they weren't dealing with yesterday, and how do we service them in such a way that we come across as we're here to help, we're not here to sell to you. And that's, from a salesperson standpoint, that's a completely different selling motion, because, they're salespeople want to get in, they want to get out, they want to help the customer, but they also have a quota to meet, right? So then kind of getting them to take a step back and realize that this is a customer for life type of a program here. And we need to figure out, how do we service our customers in such a way that what can our product do differently? How do we pivot to show them how that product does it differently? Something they already have, not trying to sell them more seats, not trying to sell them something different, and showing them how we can help them so that when this does, turn around for them, or they're not worried about, what's happening in their division or in their company right now, they can come back and say, they were really good to me during this, and they didn't just try to treat me as if I was somebody they were going to sell something to. So changing and looking at demographics differently and working with product marketing to do that was super key. And I really think it changed my focus for my role as well.
Do you feel like you were supported by your broader organizations or executives, right? When you talk about the pivot of, we know that cycles are going to take longer, we need to sell differently, we're in it for the long haul. Does anyone want to share about how you felt in the extended organization about those sorts of discussions?
Yeah, I can step in, Rebecca. I think it was a very eye-opening moment for me professionally at the company when the pandemic did start hitting, and even within the first couple of weeks, our extended leadership team was incredibly protective of our customer base, and it was very much a pivot of like, drop everything and protect the customer base. It was if they need some sort of help in regards to like payment options, if they need, different types of, programs or different features turned on that maybe they had to pay for before, like let's figure it out. And especially so with certain verticals, specifically in healthcare and essential businesses and education, because those were two, industries that were incredibly impacted by the pandemic. And this isn't a time to be, thinking about money or how we can expand, our services and get as much money as possible from people that are on the front lines, and they're pretty much helping the country and the world, keep together at the moment. So yeah, there was a huge shift, as kind of, other panelists have said, from trying to sell our customers or even our new business, prospects things, to how can we help, how can we, move your business forward, and we can think about, we can work together on, I guess, like the financial piece of it, because I think that's something that was a huge shifting point in 2020. Budgets where could have been dramatically affected one way or the other. So we were able to work with them. But yeah, it was a huge effort from the leadership team. And then of course, naturally it kind of trickled down to the middle managers and then to individual contributors.
That's one thing I was really proud of it at my company. I mean, we work in supply chain, which of course has become a much bigger thing. More people think about it now than ever before. When you think about, suppliers and the difficulty, of transportation logistics. At my company, we actually offered our solutions and services to be able to provide materials for emergency and healthcare purposes. But the way we handled it was we didn't talk about it. We got it done. We gave the time, we gave the solutions, and still haven't even I guess this is the closest we're coming to marketing it. In fact, is me sharing today, because my CEO from the start, he said, let's do this, let's do the right thing. And it was about that. And I feel like we see that in a lot of companies. And of course, we felt that way as, as marketing leaders, as well, that we just want to, we want to do the right thing.
I'm just going to add on really quick, something that I think inspired me, personally, and I think throughout our company, is you kind of mentioned it's almost this like unspoken bond that certain companies and certain people, you don't ask, you just do. And we had so many customers that just did. We had customers that were in manufacturing and had nothing to do with essential business, and they were donating, school books and lunches and masks and all kinds of things, and just kind of like rolling up their sleeves during this time. And it was one of those kind of like humanizing moments. But companies are still doing it, and nobody's asking them to do it. It's just kind of speaks to the authenticity of, the brand and the people that are leading these organizations.
I think there's something interesting that kind of both of you are chatting there, and I think this is especially the case under any crisis, under any pressure, and why it's so important that you really establish values and you understand you value your values and you make sure that it's going within the company. Because when you're under a lot of stress and you're under a lot of pressure, that's when quick decisions need to be made. And if you don't have those values in place, then you might not be making the right decisions. I think, and like in your case, Rebecca, making sure that you're doing the right thing, that's not only beneficial, I think, obviously in the circumstances of COVID for your customers and everything like that, but it's great for your business as well too in the long term, right? And I think that without those guiding principles, and allowing people to be able to make decisions that are closest to a lot of those problems, based off of those values very quickly, it can be really difficult to pivot whenever you encounter these things. And so I guess one thing that I hadn't really thought of is making sure that you have those in place before you run into anything like this, so that way you can empower people to make decisions and do the thing that's best for your business. So
That's actually where I was going to pivot, Danny. I was going to say that some of it starts with having a culture of agility or innovation, so that when something like this comes along, you're able to take the right steps. Lisa, do you want to share?
Yeah, I think part of, what, just to kind of piggyback off of what Denny said, is having the right teams in place, but also empowering and trusting the teams you put in place, right? And I think as marketers, we often find ourselves in that middle ground between the pressure from sales leaders to continue to drive pipeline during the pandemic. Our own company has to stay afloat, right? I think that's the key that none of us really want to say, but we need to say. But at the same time, just ensuring that we're also being allowed to be empathetic and be able to extend that to our customers. And like, Larissa and everybody's kind of said, preserving that customer base and even people that we're prospecting to. We have to do it in a really empathetic way so that we don't come across as, hey, we're just here to, be a one and done type of company. It's not always an easy position to be in. And sometimes it's important that, sales leaders and company leaders understand that you've put people in a certain position for a reason, and you have to trust them that we're going to, help find new ways for our organization to drive revenue while we're still keeping an eye out for that exceptional customer experience.
Yeah, Lisa, I totally agree. I think one of the wonderful things that EverFi tried to do is getting out ahead of it. We took a very aggressive approach when it came to, how we would handle COVID and the pandemic, from just shutting down our offices proactively to kind of get that going, messaging out to our customers. And then because we have a sponsorship model where teachers and students take our courses, pivoting to that and opening up resources, but then having leadership, stay ahead. We had Friday calls where we would just talk and be honest about, how things were going, keep the customer in mind, but, here's some new resources that we have for both our customers, but also the employees. So that kind of cohesion gave us a cadence that then the whole team sort of could work off of. And we're still sort of in that cadence, kind of figuring out what, the next few months look like. But it was both, I think without that, internal support, our customers would never have gotten the amount of energy or support that we were able to give during this time.
I appreciate that, Alex. I think we've seen too that need for meaningful connection with our customers and within our own companies. Does anyone want to share any examples of that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit. I think when the pandemic first hit, one of the first things that we wanted to do is actually make sure that our team members were taken care of, because if we're not in a good place, then it's really hard to take care of your customers. And so Unbalanced did an exceptional job of making sure that like everybody got home, they felt like they were safe, they were secure, that their jobs weren't going anywhere, and that we could do our jobs and focus on our jobs. And anybody that obviously was struggling with anything, we gave them the time and space to be able to take care of that, right? But I think that was the first step, and they went out of their way to make sure that as a team we were well connected, that we were spending time with each other, that we were taking care of each other. I remember like within the first few weeks we were already doing like our first Zoom like cooking class online and stuff like that, which was really cool to see. But also for our customers, I think it was really important to connect with them in a meaningful way. And I think we did that in a lot of different ways at Unbalanced, and we tried to make it as individualized as possible. But one of the biggest challenges that we ran into, again, was like every customer was experiencing this differently. For some, it was the worst thing in the world. And for others, it was actually really great for their business, but they didn't know how to deal with the scaling issue. And so we relied a lot on our customer support teams and one-to-one teams to make sure that our customers were A, heard, and B, that they were getting the support that they needed. And in order for us to do that, we really had to empower them to be able to make decisions on the front line, day by day, kind of as things came. And so one of the things that we did is like we established like task force on our team that was cross-functional with frontline workers, everybody that was customer facing, so that they could share information and come up with essentially the best solutions that they could for our customers. And then they could go ahead on the front lines, make those decisions. If you needed to pause your account for 3 months, great, it's done. And that's really that's quite impactful on our revenue, both negatively, but also positively. But I think it's really important that you're able to connect with customers on that one-to-one basis at that level and allow people to make decisions within your company. So that way they can actually, find the right solution. And at the end of the day, like most companies we're going to get through this, and we knew this, and that if we left them with like a solution where they felt like they'd been heard and taken care of, that we were going to have a customer for life potentially, right? So
I think that task force is a great example, Denny. And to me, it gets to the importance of gathering feedback generally. Are there any other success stories or even maybe pain points that anyone else wants to share on how do you gather that feedback from your customers, from what's going on, so that we can improve the work that we're doing on the marketing side?
Yeah, I can jump in, Rebecca. So I think there are a multitude of different ways, depending on, of course, how you structure your customer marketing, on how to successfully receive feedback from your customers, especially during, such an unpredictable and chaotic time as in a pandemic. For me personally, I've always very heavily relied on our customer success managers. They are the closest to customers. KCS. They're the closest to customers. They have, that daily or very regular cadence touch point with them. And so it only makes sense to, to depend on them for any type of feedback from customers. And just having regular meetings, usually bi-weekly or monthly with CS, for me, I've been able to just kind of identify patterns in, customer feedback and sentiment. So CS is definitely my number one. And then I would say secondary to that is if you have a customer advocacy program. So customers who are very engaged, usually are promoters of your brand, champions of the organization, they'll be much more vocal than, any other customer. And we incentivize them through our customer advocacy program to give us their honest feedback. Through surveys, through activities, through emails, all kinds of different channels. So that's been a really great way as well. And it's very funny and definitely eye-opening, as so many things have been for me this year, within the last year, how much a little gift can go a very long way for customers when they're stuck in their homes, and especially when you see them outside of just their professional realm. So sending gifts to customers for their dogs or their children, or something a little bit outside of the norm, goes a really long way, and customers will open up a lot more than if you just send them an email.
Yeah, one of the portfolios that I work under, we have a customer council, and that's been extremely fruitful to get different customers together for a 2-hour block to just talk, see what's upcoming on the roadmap, and to get feedback. That's been a wonderful experience to just connect customers to each other, as well as give us a space to kind of work through some of the ideas that we have at Everfi that we'd like to test, as well as some ideas customers may have that they are seeing as gaps in the market potentially. But to Larissa's point, I've received a few swag items that have to do with my dog, and it just made such an impact. I was like, just a day brightener. So I don't think you can ever go wrong with something really personalized and tailored to the person.
We've managed to blow through this panel discussion and the time that we have allowed. So I think we need to head to our last question, but I'd like to give each of you the chance to answer it. When we're thinking about what changes are here to stay, what's different now that it's 2021, what will new normal be? I'd like to take a turn with each of you to share. Why don't we go ahead and start with Larissa?
Sure. Yeah, I think, the majority of the topics that were brought up in the panel today are here to stay. Everything from virtual events to, a more empathetic and value-based messaging content strategy to, making sure that you always have a pulse on customer feedback. Those are all things that are definitely here to stay, and not just for 2021, but for the foreseeable future. I think a common theme or, thread, if I had to pick something, is with that, theme of humanizing and empathetic narrative. I would say that we're humans first and then everything else. So just kind of keeping that in mind and being able to kind of lead with that in mind, and with our values, is going to go a really long way. And I don't foresee that ever changing. So that's short, sweet, and to the point.
Thanks, Larissa. What about you, Lisa?
I think obviously with, the pandemic, that has forever changed the experience of being both a marketer and a customer. And customer experience is really, at least for me, and I think a lot of us, has taken on a new and more vital meaning against the backdrop of the pandemic. Customers are facing new challenges and new things that have come out of this. Plus, their older ones are now either shifting or they're, more in the forefront of what they're doing, and their needs have changed, right? They're more focused on essential concerns today. And I feel like organizations are starting to reinvent what is their customer experience, what does that look like, what are those those efforts need to be, and what are those primary needs. And much like all of us have said today, showing that empathy and that humanizing the brand and the care to build a stronger, more sustaining customer experience and customer relationship. And that still pivots down for me into that buyer's journey. So one thing I think that we're looking at, aside from pivoting our marketing tactics and being more flexible, is our team is very laser focused on combining and overlaying the buyer's journey with the customer journey to just ensure that we provide an exceptional experience across both prospects and customers to retain our clients while obtaining and onboarding new ones. It's a really nice way to ensure that there's that seamless experience, from beginning to end. And it's something that I can admit myself, sometimes I lose sight of, and I chunk it up, and I don't realize that it should be a seamless experience across both.
That's a great point, Lisa. Denny, over to you. What's here to stay?
Sure. Yeah, I think in a weird way, the question about like what changes are here to stay, I think change is here to stay is what it is. Like faster change all the time. For the longest time, so many companies essentially said, oh yeah, we can't support work from home. It's not possible. And 2 weeks later, every company in the world was purely supporting work from home, or at least doing their best to. And I think just looking at trends, you'll see an acceleration towards trends faster and faster and faster all the time, I think. And in order to keep up with that, I think there were kind of two things that really stood out to me, at least at Unbounce, that really empowered fast change and quick change, and us being able to support those changes, especially for our customers as well too. And that was like number one, having the data in order for us to understand what's actually happening and then make decisions about that. And then number two was empowering people to make decisions within our organization. And it really is a little bit of a shift in terms of, I think, how organizations are even structured, generally speaking, right? Like previous to the pandemic, you would have seen a lot of organizations, a lot of those decisions are made top down. And now you've got to restructure your organization if you want to stay relevant to be really bottom up. And I think ultimately, like, the biggest change is going to be that we need to keep up with change at the end of the day. And I'm excited about that in many ways. I think it will bring a lot of positive change within organizations, and it'll make workplace actually a better place to work. So and better for our customers as well too.
Alex, it's not going to be easy to close it up after so many great points from the others, but if you would, please.
Sure. I think the thing that's here to stay is recognizing that the customer needs to be central to the business decisions that are being made. I think many maybe thought that their customer was central, and then when the pandemic hit, realized maybe perhaps there was business decisions being made in a vacuum or without the customer in mind, and that's businesses that have been able to pivot are seeing, reaping the benefits of that, and those that aren't are maybe struggling to find their voice in the market or their voice with connecting to customers when it comes to renewal time or upsells or whatever it may be. So just refocusing around the customer, making data-driven decisions, which Denny, I love that you mentioned, and keeping an empathetic mindset, the human first advice that Larissa gave, I think is so spot on from now and until forever, really.
Thanks everyone for your time. This has been a great session. Again, I'm just surprised that the time went by as quickly as it did, but looking forward to connecting with everyone in the chat and in the ongoing discussions with the community. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone.